Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Coming Down to Earth with Spirit podcast with me, David Hale. Like with Season 1, we will continue talking about all things spiritual in a real and down-to-earth way. So I hope you can join me on my podcast journey so you can learn from my own spiritual journey and experiences with spirit in order to help you on your own spiritual journey and development. So join me now as we get into this episode. Hello everybody, happy Halloween! I hope you're all well, and thank you as always for tuning in to my podcast. And I thought that as it is Halloween, I'd use this episode as an opportunity to talk about my views on spooky things like Halloween, paranormal things, and I've also got a question which I'm going to answer from a listener about the paranormal, about ghosts and all that kind of thing. So this episode is going to be a bit of a mishmash of spooky things. It's not that spooky to be honest, but yeah, I'll let you decide how spooky they are. So firstly, let's talk about Halloween. Now, growing up, we as a family, we never celebrated Halloween. It's not something that I ever celebrated. I still don't celebrate Halloween today either. It's just a normal day. The world is still full of scary people, whether they're dressed up or not. But no, having said that, when I was a kid, we used to go to a social club around the corner, and at Halloween they had like the Halloween disco for the kids and things. So I remember myself, my siblings, the next door neighbour who was a kid as well. We got dressed up in fancy dress. I went as a vampire, the typical vampire. My sister was a witch. Nothing much has changed there. I'm only kidding. Love you, sis. She's going to kill me. And my brother went as Frankenstein. And my stepbrother went as a mummy. And so, yeah, I have memories of dressing up for that like one night, but never celebrated it. Then as an adult, when I was doing drag, of course, with the whole dressing up thing, we'd have nights out down the local gay bar where they would do like a Halloween themed night with a DJ where myself and a couple of us would just get dressed up. Because I was doing drag, the natural thing to do was to go dressed as Catwoman. The next time I did it, I went dressed... Well, what can I say? I look like a hooker, basically. So yeah, that's the kind of the extent of my Halloween celebrations. But apart from that, growing up as a kid, we never celebrated it. We were never allowed to go trick-or-treating. So I can say I've never been trick-or-treating ever in my life. My mum wouldn't let us because my mum, she sees trick-or-treating as begging, right? So we were never allowed to go trick-or-treating either. So yeah, it's just something that I've never celebrated. I've never really got into. I don't decorate the house. I'm waiting for Christmas to come, never mind Halloween. So yeah, that's just not something that I celebrated. Now, aside from the dressing up and the fancy dress, there is this idea put out there that the veil becomes thinner at Halloween, meaning that there's some kind of imaginary force field that lifts, which allows spirit people to come closer. Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't know where that came from or who brought the idea up, because to be honest, the idea that there is a veil and the veil is thinner, to me is a load of bollocks, to be perfectly honest, because as anyone that practices this work will know, that spirit don't give a shit what time of day it is, let alone what time of the year it is, for them to communicate. They can communicate whenever they want. There is no veil that lifts, because if we understand the mechanics of spirit communication, the majority of the time it's done through the mind. We communicate mind to mind. So where then is that veil? Is that a veil in my mind? I would say that's more likely the case, because, when I'm not working, I do draw that curtain across and say, no, not now. I'm not wanting to communicate with you right now. I'm going to bed, or I'm doing my shopping, or I'm going out to have a nice time with my partner. So maybe that's when the veil is there in my head, but there is no veil that thins out to allow spirit to come close. that for me is just, that's something that's been made up, that's been put there by human beings to make Halloween look a bit more fantastical, to look a bit more spooky and a bit more scary. But in reality, there is no veil. And I'm actually really surprised by certain mediums that I have watched over the years who do come across as being quite down to earth, but then they also sell this idea about the veil being thinner. There is no veil. Spirit couldn't give a shit, as I say, what time of year it is. You know, for me, they're more likely to come close during their anniversary, whether it be an anniversary of their death or a birthday or a marriage anniversary, not Halloween. Halloween is just, it's something that's just been brought into the public domain by people, not by the spirit world. The spirit world didn't make Halloween up. The spirit world didn't create Halloween. It's got nothing to do with them. It's human society who have built Halloween up to be this holiday, to be this moment of connecting with the dead. Well, no, you connect with your loved ones, with your dead throughout the whole entire year. There doesn't need to be a Halloween or a thinning veil to allow your spirit people to come close. But anyway, that's just my opinion of it. So I don't pay any attention to this thinning of the veil. It does not matter one iota what day it is. Anyhow, whilst on the topic of dead people and ghosts, let's talk about that. Let's talk about spooky experiences and ghosts, and then maybe answer the question which was put to me by a listener called Rachel about connected to paranormal. So to be honest, I don't know if I believe in the term ghosts, and I think I've talked about this briefly before. Because actually a ghost, again, it's a word that's been made up by humans, right? The word ghost has never been given to us by the spirit world. A ghost is not a term which spiritualists would really use, to be perfectly honest. Again, it's these words that are made up to make something more fantastical or a bit more spooky. And I feel that's why there are some people who are afraid of the spirit world, because they see it as being something to be afraid of and scary because of what terms humans have attached to it, have attached to ghost or to spirit. And I did a podcast episode on this a couple of weeks back, actually, about how to get over your fear of the spirit world and spirits and what have you. And within it, I explained that the spirit world is not a scary place. It's where your loved ones are. They're in the spirit world. They're not scary. They're not here to scare us at all, right? So it's the world of spirit is not scary. But as soon as you say ghost, people's hairs go up on the back of their neck, when actually that shouldn't be the case. Now, for me personally, I have never seen what you would call a ghost, but what I have seen are manifestations of spirit. But what am I talking about? Well, in order to talk about that, let's just let's explain from my perspective, the difference between a ghost, if you believe in that, and a manifestation. So the way to explain it, to allow people to understand it, is that a manifestation, from my perspective, is when a spirit person will show themselves to you in a physical form. So they will use a lot of their own energy to build up this image of themselves, so you can actually see them out in front of you with the physical eyes, or sometimes just within the third eye, but you know that they're there. So rather than communicate with you through the mind, which normally happens, they will manifest themselves. And some people might say, oh, I've seen a ghost. But to me, no, I've just seen a physical manifestation of that spirit. And to be clear, they're not haunting you or haunting anything else. They just want to show themselves to you in a more physical form. So whether it's just so that you notice them more, or they want to get a particular message across, but they're not haunting, they're just showing themselves in that moment. Whereas a ghost it's still a spirit person, but there's still someone that once lived who's now passed the spirit. But when you say the word ghost, attached to that word is another word, which is haunting. So whenever people think of the word ghost, they automatically think haunting. This ghost is haunting my house. This ghost is haunting that graveyard. This ghost is haunting this old building over here. So whereas we had when I talked about manifestations, the spirit person is just manifesting themselves to you for that moment. When it comes to the term ghost, people believe that it's a spirit person who has not quite made it across to the world of spirit and are grounded and attached themselves to the earth energy, and therefore they are now haunting a number of buildings and, let's say, graveyards and different places and whatever else, right? But is that actually the reality? Well, there are different opinions on that. There are some people who do believe that some spirit people can attach themselves to the earth because they have got unfinished business. So whether it be they were in the middle of a project like building a house or something which they didn't quite get finished because they passed suddenly, what have you, or they've attached themselves because they don't want to leave their loved ones that are here, right? So there is that side of it. Then there are other people, other mediums who don't believe that ghosts really exist, because if you think about the intelligence of spirit and the process of death, when we die, the soul's natural journey is to go to the spirit world, because that's where we're housed, right? When we pass, we go to the world of spirits. So it doesn't make sense for some people to then be told that, well, that spirit is not in the spirit world, they're hanging around an old building. Because you think, why? Why are they hanging around that old building? Why are they hanging around that graveyard? Why would your loved one want to hang around somewhere where their physical remains have been laid? Why? There's no reason for them to do that. They're in the spirit world. They want to be with you. They want to be around you, not around a cemetery where physical remains are laid. There are no souls in a graveyard. It's their physical bodies in the graveyard, but the souls of your dead relatives are not in the graveyard. Why would they be? So there are different opinions, varying views on ghosts and what have you. You have to come to your own conclusions with that one, as however you want to. Because some of you might say that you've seen a ghost. I'm not going to tell you that you haven't, right? If you have, you have. But for me personally, I can't say that I've ever seen a ghost, but what I have seen are those physical manifestations of spirit, and I've spoken about these, or at least one of them in my book, where I saw the manifestation of a spirit boy in my kitchen in my old flat. I've seen another manifestation on the corner of a road as I was walking. I think I was walking home from work. I was coming back from walking the dog, and it was night time, and I saw this lad on the corner. And then another time I was coming out of my church that I was going to when I was in development in London, and I came out, and as I was going towards the car, I looked to my right and I got a quick flash of a spirit person stood there. So I wouldn't call them ghosts. I would just say that they were spirit people who were trying to get my attention and to manifest in front of me so I could draw them, because that's what I did. On each of those occasions, when I got home from after seeing them, I was able to sketch them in my notepad, and I talked about drawing spirit in a previous episode, and I was able to sketch them and get a message across to the person they were trying to get to. So there's a purpose for them doing that, because I knew if I just put something out there, people wouldn't have a clue what I'm talking about. But if I actually sketched them and got some kind of likeness and put it out on my Facebook page, people did recognize who they were, and I was able to give evidence to back it up. So again, for me, it wasn't, oh, I saw a ghost. It was, oh, I just saw a spirit person. So for me, it was just that manifestation of spirits. I don't believe they were haunting anywhere. They weren't haunting that bit of road that they were stood on. They weren't haunting my flat. It was just, that's how they wanted to show themselves to me again in that moment. So added to this then, let's answer a question that Rachel put to me, which is, what do I believe, or do I put any faith in modern day ghost hunters? Well, to be honest, these days I don't watch these paranormal TV shows or ghost hunts or things like that at all. Back in the day I did. When I first started becoming interested in mediums, I became interested through the TV show Most Haunted, from the very first episode. So this is going back quite a while. And, back then I didn't know any different, right? But what I knew was it never scared me. Although, you had the lead presenter screaming her head off and being frightened and says she's seen this, she's seen that. I was intrigued by it, and to a point I kind of believed it, and I kind of believed what I was seeing. Again, I was only in my late teens, I think, and I wasn't doing any mediumship development. I didn't know what spiritualism was, so I didn't understand that there was a difference between the paranormal and mediumship or spiritualism, because they are two different things, really. Because ultimately the paranormal has nothing to do with spiritualism, although they're talking about spirits and ghosts, they are very different things. And what the paranormal is, in my opinion, and I've heard Lisa Williams, international psychic medium, say this as well, is that what the paranormal is, they've taken physical mediumship and they've turned it into entertainment. They've turned it into this scary, spooky thing, when actually mediumship in general is not scary. And physical mediumship also doesn't have to be scary. It can be great proof of spirit existence, but they've turned it into this scary ghost hunting thing, and they've made pretty much light of it. But yeah, that's where the paranormal's come from. They've taken the physical aspect of mediumship and they've just made it into something that it's not really. But coming back to programs like Most Haunted, it's not until you get a bit older, when you look back at those kind of programs, where you understand how things can be, I want to say, manipulated, allegedly. And you see that, it's a TV show. Things might be amped up for dramatic purposes, allegedly. So back then I was interested in it, but now knowing what I know and doing what I do, I don't watch them, because even I have I don't want to say a skeptical mind, but I do question things. I don't take everything necessarily at face value when it comes to those kind of things, because I know that there are shows out there which are made to look pretty or sensationalist or a bit more scary than they should be, and all those kind of things. And sometimes I'm someone, I will believe certain things when I experience it for myself. So for me personally, I've never been on a paranormal investigation, and I prefer that word, investigation. I don't like the term ghost hunt, because what are you hunting? It's like me saying to you, I'm going to go on this investigation, I'm going to try and hunt your dead grandmother. How does that sound to you? So that's just me. I'm not being pernickety there, but the term hunt, when you're hunting something, for me it has a negative connotation, and I think it's a little bit disrespectful to spirit to say, I'm going to come and hunt you. And also, when you see some of these paranormal TV shows, the investigators are antagonizing the spirit people. Well, again, for me, that's disrespectful, because that's like me antagonizing your grandparents who are passed. It's like me antagonizing a friend of yours who's passed, antagonizing a parent that's passed. Again, for me, that isn't right. So if I was to ever do some kind of paranormal thing, it would be an investigation, not a hunt. That's just my feelings about it, because again, I respect the spirit world, and by hunting them, antagonizing them, that to me shows a lack of respect to where our spirit families are, right? That's just my point of view. But ultimately, in answer to the question, do I put faith in them? Well, I've yet to see actual really good evidence of a ghost, but I don't need to see it though. That's the thing, because I know the spirit world exists. I have seen manifestations, as I've said. I don't know if I actually need to, if it needs to be proven to me that ghosts exist, because I know spirit exists. So it's a bit of a not a conundrum, because I don't actually care what they're doing, as long as they do it respectfully. Having said that, I would like to go and do a paranormal investigation just to see for myself and experience for myself if I can pick up anything that, you know, that I feel in that particular building or area or wherever it might be. But again, I don't know if my mind can go there to believe, because then by doing that, you're then saying that a ghost must be haunting this place for me to pick up on them. Do you know what I mean? So it's a little bit for me. I'm not sure. And you know, there are cases out there where we talk about is a place actually haunted, or is it the energy within the fabric of the building that's replaying these memories that mediums are picking up on, rather than actually being haunted? So there's something called the stone tape theory, which I'm not an expert on, but it's where certain, like anything, like any building will house the energy of people that have inhabited it, right? It's like your keys, your phone, your wallet, all these things that you carry and you hold regularly, door handles, whatever, they will pick up energy. They will contain energy of those people that have touched them. So if you've been in an old building that's been there for 200 years, you're going to have a lot of people passing in and out of that building. The fabric of the building can absorb the energy of the memories within that place, and under certain conditions, those memories can be replayed, a bit like a tape. That's why it's called the stone tape theory, because the stone of the building, the brick of the building, has absorbed those memories, and when you do an investigation, those memories start replaying rather than the building actually being haunted, if that makes any sense. But you can look it up online, the stone tape theory. So there's something to be said about that as well. But again, it's just something that I have to experience for myself, so I can understand within myself, do I resonate with it? Does it really exist? Do ghosts really exist? Do hauntings really exist? So it's something that might come in the future for me, but we'll see what happens. What else is spooky? Well, actually, Rachel did ask another question, which is, given what you do you believe in aliens? Because some people find the thought of aliens spooky, and witches or witchcraft. Well, let's talk about aliens first. I remember many, many years ago, when I was a lot younger, a program was on the TV talking about aliens and the existence and that kind of thing. And I was at home at the time, and I made some comment, I think, something like, oh, bloody aliens, whatever. And I remember my mum came out of the kitchen and she said to me, David, do you really think that in this big old universe that we live in, that we're the only beings to exist in it? And it really did get me thinking. And obviously, as I've grown and matured, you do think in different ways. And now I do think that way. I do think, you know, how arrogant of us would it be to say that we are the only ones that are the only beings that exist in this big old universe that we're in. We're just one planet out of a massive solar system. Are we the only beings in it? I don't think so, because that would suggest that we're some superior race. And let me tell you, seeing what goes on in the world, seeing how we treat people, how we treat each other, we are not superior beings at all. So I do believe that some form of life exists somewhere else, but what that is, I don't know. Will we ever find out in our lifetime? I highly doubt it. But I don't think we're the only beings that exist, especially in as I say, the big old universe that we're in. When it comes to witches, witchcraft, there are people out there who say that they do practice witchcraft, not in the way that we think. Again, when you mention the word witch, there's always this negative connotation of, oh, they're practicing dark magic and voodoo and they're putting spells on people and, and curses and all this business. I personally don't believe in curses. I don't believe in possession. I don't believe in putting spells on other people, because that would suggest that another human is more powerful over you and has the power to affect you, your energy. And I just don't believe that's the case. So yeah, I don't believe in curses. I believe that they are a psychological thing that's used, because if you say to someone, you've got a curse on you, you're going to think it. You're going to go, oh my God, it's going to frighten you. It's going to panic you. So again, it comes back to these fear tactics. So people would think you've got a curse on you, because who wants to be cursed? But I don't believe that can happen. And I've said it before, I don't feel that anything can affect your energy unless you invite it in. So if you go, let's say you do a Ouija board session with no protection, you're messing about with it, you're drunk, making fun of the spirit world, then you can potentially invite whatever in to your energy, whether it be your energetic body yourself, the energy within your home, then potentially that can happen. But I don't think anyone can put a curse on you because you haven't invited it in. Your guides, if they say we've all got a spirit guide, then their job is to protect you. So if you've got a spirit guide protecting you, how can someone else have the power over you to curse you? Do you know what I mean? So I don't believe in any of that. But whether witches exist, don't know, never met one. We've heard a lot about them through history. In fact, there were mediums back in the day who were prosecuted under the Witchcraft Act. So you can't deny that witchcraft didn't exist. I think it did. But what it looks like in today's standards, I think is obviously very different. But what it actually looks like, I don't know. So I can't talk too intelligently about it. But all I will say is I don't believe in people putting curses on you or spells and things like that. I don't necessarily believe that. What else is scary? Well, the last thing I think I'll talk about is death, because people do find death itself a scary thing. And I think about death quite a lot, really. It might sound a bit strange, but I was saying this to my mum a while ago, and she's the same, is that since doing this work, I think about death more now than I've ever thought about it in my life. And I think it's because of what I see people go through the readings that I do, where you can't help question death and question the process and question the aftermath. And obviously, look, I've lost a lot of people to spirit as well, right? So I know what it's like firsthand. But no, I'm lucky. I still have my parents, or my grandparents have gone. I've lost an uncle, I've lost a stepfather, and some other people as well. So I have been through that process. But I don't think when you do this work, you can't help but, I guess, sympathise with people, which you should do anyway. Otherwise, if you can't empathise with people who've lost someone, you shouldn't be doing the work in the first place. But I think it does make you look at your own life and take stock of what you have in your life. And when you see how death affects other people, I do think, how do they get through that? When I read for people who have lost children, I mean, I'm not a father. I don't think I ever will be one. Not that I'm desperate to be one, but I can't imagine what they go through having lost their child. Even when I see people that have lost their parents, I do sometimes think, well, if it's affected them that way, how am I going to feel when my parent? I know it seems quite morbid, but I'm just trying to get a point across. But I feel like how am I going to feel? What am I going to do? How am I going to cope when I lose my parents? Because it's going to happen, right? And the funny thing about death is, it's the one thing in life that we're guaranteed. None of us are going to get away from it, right? We're all going to physically die at some point, but it's still something that people are scared of. We don't talk about, don't want to acknowledge, or we say it's not fair that person's died. Well, whilst I understand that, we're all going to die at some point. Do you know what I mean? It's a real weird. I mean, death can be a really weird thing to talk about. For some people, it can be a really sad thing to talk about. But the reality is, it comes to us all at some point. But coming back to the scariness of it, people do ask me if I'm afraid of death, and honestly, no, not afraid of the process, because I know where I'm going. I know my loved one's going to be there to collect me when I go over. But I guess like anyone, it's the thought of how am I going to get to that point? Do you know what I mean? Because what I mean is, we'd all like to think that we're going to pass peacefully away in our beds. We're going to close our eyes and just drift off. But that's not necessarily the reality of it, as we know. Right? People can pass in many different ways, some far more horrendous than others, but we'd like to think that we would pass in a peaceful way. So I guess that's the only scary part for anyone, I think. But actually, the process of death itself, I feel, is relatively a peaceful one, because sometimes the soul feels the relief to detach itself from the physical body that it's been housed in for God knows how many years. And from the soul's perspective, or your spirit, whatever you want to call it, it's headed back home again, Do you know what I mean? It's going back to where it came from. And as I say, you'll have your loved one or your loved ones, not necessarily just one person, that will be there to take your hand over into the world of spirit. You're not going to have the Grim Reaper stood at the end of your bed, dragging you away by your hair or your testicles, telling you you've had enough time here, let's go, pack your bags, we're off. It's quite the opposite. Well, I think that's all I wanted to talk about in today's episode. If you do celebrate Halloween, have a fabulous Halloween, doing whatever it is that you're doing. Next stop is Christmas. So once Halloween's out of the way, you do realise that it's Christmas will be just around the corner, don't you? And sometimes that could be scarier than Halloween. But as always, thank you very much for listening and for tuning into my podcast each week. Look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you all soon. Well, there you have it. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard and you found it interesting. There are plenty more episodes to come, so stay tuned, and I'll speak to you all soon.